Child risks everything to help a wolf cub. The next day, the pack surrounds him. Mrs. Martha Johnson felt her heart tighten every time she looked at her 4-year-old grandson playing alone in the yard of their small rural property. Ever since Tommy's parents had mysteriously disappeared 2 years ago, the boy had become quieter, more observant, as if carrying a weight too heavy for his small shoulders. It was on a September morning, when dew still covered the grass like tiny diamonds, that Tommy found something that would forever change their lives. The boy had gone out early to collect the chicken eggs when he heard a faint cry coming from the fence that separated their property from the thick woods. There was a wolf cub no bigger than a puppy, with one of its hind legs caught in the barbed wire of the old fence. Little Tommy didn't think twice. With his small hands, he began carefully freeing the cub from the wires that were hurting it. The animal looked at him with frightened eyes but didn't try to bite. It was as if it knew the boy was there to help. "Easy there, little one," whispered Tommy, using the same gentle voice his grandmother used with him when he was sad. "I'll get you out of there." The cub was bleeding from its paw, and Tommy, without thinking what his grandmother would say, tore the hem of his favorite shirt to make an improvised bandage. He had seen Mrs. Martha Johnson care for an injured chicken a few weeks before and tried to remember her actions. When he finally managed to free the little wolf, Tommy carried it in his arms to the old barn at the back of the property. There, among bales of hay and old tools, he made a small bed with straw and covered the cub with a clean cloth he had secretly taken from the clothesline. "Don't worry," he said softly, stroking the cub's head. "I'll take care of you until you're better." What Tommy didn't know was that his grandmother had noticed his delay in returning with the eggs and was already looking for him. Mrs. Martha Johnson, a 65-year-old woman who had raised 6 children and now found herself responsible for a grandson, had an eagle eye for anything out of the ordinary. "Tommy!" she shouted from the yard. "Where are you, boy?" The boy came running out of the barn, his clothes dirty with soil and little bits of straw stuck in his hair. "I'm here, Grandma," he replied, trying to sound natural but with his heart pounding. Mrs. Martha Johnson looked at her grandson suspiciously. Something was different about him, an anxiety he couldn't completely hide. "What were you doing in the barn, son?" "Nothing, Grandma. Just looking for eggs that must have rolled away." The old woman wasn't convinced, but at that moment she had other worries. The chickens were her only source of income, and every egg made a difference in the household's tight budget. Since she had been widowed 10 years ago and later taken custody of her grandson, every penny was counted and recounted. All day long, Tommy could hardly concentrate on his play. His mind was in the barn, thinking about the injured cub. At lunchtime, he hid half of his bologna sandwich in his pants pocket. "Aren't you hungry, dear?" asked Mrs. Martha Johnson, noticing the boy was just picking at his food. "I am, Grandma. It's just my stomach feels a bit upset." After lunch, while Mrs. Martha Johnson took a quick nap in the hammock on the porch, Tommy slipped away to the barn. The cub was awake but still very weak. Its little brown eyes lit up when it saw the boy approach. "I brought you some food," whispered Tommy, offering small pieces of the sandwich. The cub sniffed the food suspiciously at first, but hunger won out. It ate slowly, always looking at Tommy as if to say thank you. This routine repeated itself for 3 days. Tommy shared his food with the pup, made up excuses to go to the barn, and cared for the injured paw with the tenderness of an experienced nurse. The little wolf was already smarter, even trying to wag its little tail when it saw the boy arrive. But secrets are hard to keep, especially for a 4-year-old. On the 4th day, Mrs. Susan Wilson, the closest neighbor, was stopping by to borrow some sugar when she noticed Tommy's strange behavior. "That boy has been very restless, hasn't he, Martha?" commented the 50-year-old woman, watching Tommy run eagerly toward the barn for the 3rd time that morning. "I've noticed it too," agreed Mrs. Martha Johnson, a worried frown forming on her forehead. "He's hiding something." Mrs. Regina, who always had a reputation for being curious in the neighborhood, decided to investigate. After having coffee and making some excuses, she hid behind the bamboo fence and watched the boy's movements. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. It was when she saw Tommy enter the barn carrying a plate with leftover food that Mrs. Susan was sure something was happening. She waited for the boy to leave, and with silent steps, approached the barn. What she saw left her speechless. A wolf pup, clearly still very young, was nestled in a bed of straw, eating the leftover food Tommy had brought. The animal lifted its head upon noticing the strange presence and let out a small defensive growl. Mrs. Susan left there with her heart racing. Wolves were dangerous, wild animals. What if it grew up and attacked Tommy? What if it brought other wolves onto the property? The stories she heard in town about wild animal attacks all came to mind at once. That afternoon, when Mrs. Martha was hanging clothes on the line, the neighbor appeared with a serious expression on her face. "Martha, we need to talk. It's about your grandson." "What has Tommy done now?" asked the grandmother, already imagining some mischief. "It's not mischief, it's much more serious. He's hiding a wolf in the barn." The clothesline slipped from Mrs. Martha's hands. The wet clothes fell onto the dusty ground, but she didn't even notice. "What do you mean, a wolf?" "I saw it with my own eyes. A pup, but it's a wolf all right. Martha, this is very dangerous. And it's a crime too. You can't keep a wild animal at home." Mrs. Martha felt her legs go weak. How had Tommy managed to catch a wolf, and where? 1,000 thoughts raced through her head in seconds. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. And look, Martha, I can't pretend I didn't see it. If something happens to that boy because of that animal, how will I live with myself? You need to do something about this. If you don't, I'll have to call the authorities." Mrs. Susan's ultimatum echoed in Mrs. Martha's mind for the rest of the day. She watched Tommy with different eyes, noticing signs she had ignored before. The boy was thinner because he was sharing his food. His clothes always had bits of straw on them because he spent hours in the barn. And he had a constant anxiety because he was worried about his little charge. At dinner time, Mrs. Martha could no longer pretend she knew nothing. "Tommy, come sit here next to Grandma. I need to talk to you." The boy approached with big, innocent eyes, but she could see the nervousness in his gestures. "My dear, Grandma knows you're hiding something in the barn." Tommy lowered his head, playing with his hands in his lap. For a moment Mrs. Martha thought he would deny it, but then she heard the small, confused voice. "I can't leave him hurt, Grandma. He was trapped in the fence, crying. Just like I sometimes cry when I remember my dad and Mum." Mrs. Martha Johnson's heart broke. The boy had identified his own pain in the suffering of the pup. "What kind of animal is that, Tommy?" "It's really small, Grandma. It has pointy ears and little brown eyes. It likes me. It doesn't bite." "Tommy, show me where it is." With hesitant steps, the boy led his grandmother to the barn. When she saw the pup, she had to admit it was a moving scene. The little wolf was clearly attached to Tommy, licking his hand and trying to play despite its bandaged paw. "Grandma, he's going to die if I don't take care of him, just like what happened with Dad and Mom." Tommy's innocent question hit Mrs. Martha Johnson like a punch to the stomach. The boy was reliving his trauma through that animal. For him, saving the pup was a way of saving the parents he couldn't protect. "My love, I understand you want to help, but this is a wolf. When it grows up, it will become dangerous, and we could get into serious trouble for raising it." "But he's my friend, Grandma. He won't hurt me." Mrs. Martha Johnson was in a bind. On one hand, she understood her grandson's affection for the animal and knew it was helping him deal with the loss of his parents. On the other, she was afraid of the consequences and the pressure from Mrs. Susan Wilson. "Let me think about what we're going to do, okay? But for now, this stays between us." That night, Mrs. Martha Johnson barely slept a wink. She remembered the difficult childhood she herself had had, the prejudices she faced as a single mother, the times society had turned its back on her. Couldn't she do things differently for her grandson? The next morning she made a decision. She looked up Dr. Mark, the veterinarian in the town of Indian Falls, which was 20 kilometers away. "Doctor, could you take a look at an animal my grandson found injured?" "Of course, Mrs. Martha Johnson." "What kind of animal?" It's a wolf pup." The silence on the other end of the phone line was long and awkward. "Ma'am, I can't treat wild animals. Besides being dangerous, it's against the law. You need to contact the environmental authorities." "But doctor, it's just a little pup. It's hurt. My grandson saved it." Mrs. Martha Johnson, I understand the situation, but I can't get involved. If they find out, I could lose my license. The best thing is to hand the animal over to those authorized to care for it." Another door had closed. Mrs. Martha Johnson began to understand that society wasn't prepared for the compassion her grandson had shown. Meanwhile, Tommy continued to care for his little friend with the dedication of a mother. Every day he brought fresh water, food, and spent hours talking to the pup as if it understood every word. "When you get better, we'll play outside," the boy said, stroking the animal's grey fur. "You'll like the backyard. There's lots of space to run." The pup really seemed to understand. Its eyes lit up when Tommy arrived, and it had developed its own way of showing affection, nudging the boy's hand with its snout and making a soft purring sound. But secrets have a life of their own, and this one was growing too fast to be contained. A week after Mrs. Susan Wilson's ultimatum, the inevitable happened. The pup, which was getting stronger and more active, began to let out small howls during the night. They weren't loud, but in the quiet of the rural area, any sound carried far. Mr. Thomas Brown, the wealthiest farmer in the region, was the first to notice. Owner of a cattle ranch that bordered Mrs. Martha Johnson's land, he had a deep fear of predators. He had already lost calves to jaguars and was always on the lookout for any threat to his herd. "There's a wolf around here," he grumbled to his foreman the next morning. "I heard howls last night." "Are you sure, boss?" "It's been a while since I've seen a wolf around these parts. I have good hearing. And I know wolves. I killed several when I was younger." Mr. Thomas Brown started making nightly rounds on his property, armed with an old shotgun. He was a 70-year-old man, but still strong and stubborn. He had built his fortune with sweat and determination, and he wouldn't let any predator threaten his cattle. On the third night, the howls became clearer. They were coming from the direction of Mrs. Martha Johnson's property. The next day, he showed up at his neighbor's house. "Good morning, Mrs. Martha Johnson. I'm here on a serious matter." The woman received him politely, but was apprehensive. Mr. Thomas Brown wasn't one for social visits. "Of course, Mr. Thomas Brown. How can I help you?" "There's a wolf on your land. I hear howls every night coming from your property." "A wolf? I think you must be mistaken. All I have here are chickens and Tommy." "I'm not mistaken, and I came to warn you that if this wolf shows up on my property, I'll deal with it. I can't lose cattle because of someone else's problem." Mr. Thomas Brown's threatening tone sent a chill down Mrs. Martha Johnson's spine. She knew the man wasn't joking. "But Mr. Thomas Brown, if there were a wolf here, I would know, don't you think?" "Sometimes we don't see what we don't want to see, Mrs. Martha Johnson, but I've warned you. Any damage to my cattle, and I'll go after whoever is sheltering the predator." After he left, Mrs. Martha Johnson ran to the barn. There was Tommy, as always, playing with the cub, which was already much bigger and smarter. "Tommy, is this little animal making noise at night?" "Sometimes he talks to me, Grandma, but very quietly." "What do you mean, he talks?" "He makes some sounds, like when I talk to him during the day." Mrs. Martha Johnson realized the situation was getting out of control. The cub was growing, getting noisier, and attracting attention. Besides the pressure from Mrs. Susan Wilson and the threats from Mr. Thomas Brown, she was starting to genuinely worry about safety. "Tommy, come here. Grandma needs to explain something important." She knelt down to the boy's height, holding his small hands. "My love, this little animal you saved is a wolf. When it grows up, it will become very big and strong, stronger than Grandma, stronger than you." "But he likes me, Grandma." "I know he does, but wolves need to live in the wild, with their family. If he stays here, he might get sick. And when he grows up, he might hurt someone by accident because he'll be so strong." Tommy's little eyes filled with tears. "Like Daddy and Mommy. Did they leave because I didn't take good care of them?" The question broke Mrs. Martha Johnson's heart. The boy was carrying a guilt that wasn't his to bear. "No, my love. Daddy and Mommy didn't leave because of you. They got lost doing their jobs. It was nobody's fault." "Then why can't I take care of the wolf cub?" Mrs. Martha Johnson took a deep breath. How to explain to a 4-year-old the legal, social, and practical complexities of the situation? "Because there are rules, my dear, rules that adults made to protect the little animals and the people. If we don't follow these rules, there could be serious problems. What kind of problems? They could take you away from Grandma. This possibility terrified Tommy more than anything else. Losing his grandmother would mean being completely alone in the world. I don't want to go away, Grandma. And I don't want you to go. That's why we need to find a way to help your little friend without breaking the rules. That night, while Tommy slept, Mrs. Martha Johnson lay awake thinking of solutions. She remembered a news report she had seen on television about a biologist who worked with wild animals in the region. Maybe she could help. The next day, she called the Indian Falls Town Hall. "Hello, I need the contact information for someone who works with forest animals. Are you referring to Dr. Fern Miller? She's a biologist and works with environmental preservation here in the region." "That's right. How can I speak with her?" After getting the phone number, Mrs. Martha Johnson called Dr. Fern Miller. "Doctor, my grandson found an injured wolf pup and has been taking care of it. I know it's not right, but the boy has become very attached. I don't know what to do." The biologist, a 35-year-old woman who had dedicated her life to preserving the local wildlife, was intrigued. "Ma'am, wolf pups are very rare in this region. Can I come by tomorrow to assess the situation?" "Please, doctor. I'm desperate." The next day, Dr. Fern arrived at the property driving a small white car, equipped with research materials. She was a thin woman, with brown hair tied in a ponytail and prescription glasses that gave her a serious but kind look. Tommy watched her suspiciously when Mrs. Martha Johnson led her to the barn. "Hi, Tommy. I'm Dr. Fern. Your grandmother told me you have a special little friend here. He's hurt. I took care of him until he got better." When the biologist saw the pup, her eyes widened in surprise. "My goodness, it really is a young maned wolf, and it's in great condition." "Maned wolf?" asked Mrs. Martha Johnson. "Yes. It's a Brazilian species, different from the wolves we see in movies. They are taller, have long legs, and are much more docile. But they are still wild animals." Dr. Fern examined the pup carefully, impressed with the care it had received. "Tommy, you did an excellent job taking care of him. The little paw is perfectly healed." The boy smiled with pride but soon became worried. "Are you going to take him away?" "Tommy, your little friend needs to learn to live in the wild, but I'm not just going to take him. Let's talk about the best way to help." Dr. Fern sat on the barn floor at Tommy's eye level. "You know what happens when a maned wolf grows up away from nature? It gets confused. It doesn't know how to look for food by itself. It doesn't know how to protect itself from dangers. It doesn't know how to talk to other wolves. But he talks to me. And that's very special. It shows you have a gift for understanding animals. But imagine if you had to live in the forest without knowing anything about it. It would be scary, wouldn't it?" Tommy thought about the analogy and nodded his head. "That's what happens if we leave your little friend here for too long. He'll forget how to be a wolf." "So he's leaving forever?" "Not necessarily. How about we do it like this? I take him to a special place where he can learn to live in the wild, but he can still visit you sometimes." Tommy's eyes shone with hope. "He can come back to play with me." "If he wants to, yes. Maned wolves are very intelligent. If he remembers you fondly, he might choose to visit." Mrs. Martha Johnson was impressed with the biologist's sensitivity in handling the situation. "Doctor, where would this special place be?" "There's an environmental reserve about 50 kilometers from here. We work with wildlife rehabilitation. Your grandson could even visit us to see how he's adapting." Tommy was quiet for a long time, stroking the pup sleeping in his lap. "Will he be happy there?" "Very happy. And you can be proud of having saved his life. Without you, he wouldn't have survived." "Can I go along on the first day?" "Of course, I'll need your help for him to feel safe." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out now continuing. The negotiation was going well, but fate still had surprises in store for that small family. That same afternoon, as Dr. Fern Miller finished explaining the procedures to Mrs. Martha Johnson, Mr. Thomas Brown showed up at the property again. This time he wasn't alone. He had brought John Rivers, a man known in the area for working with wildlife control. "Mrs. Johnson, I came here with John to solve this wolf problem once and for all. The biologist came out of the barn upon hearing the raised voices. Good afternoon, I'm Dr. Fern Miller, a biologist. May I ask what the problem is? Mr. Brown looked at her with suspicion. The problem is that there's a wolf on this property threatening my cattle. I came looking for a solution. Sir, the animal in question is a manned wolf pup, a protected species. It poses no threat to cattle. A wolf is a wolf, Doctor, and John here is going to take care of it. John Rivers, a 40-year-old man with scars on his face, seemed uncomfortable with the biologist's presence. Look, Doctor, I understand you want to protect the animals, but my job is to solve problems. And if people are complaining about a wolf, the animal is under my responsibility now, interrupted Dr. Fern Miller, displaying an authority that impressed everyone. I am accredited by environmental agencies to handle wild fauna. Any action against the animal without authorization is a crime against wildlife. Mr. Brown was angered by the response. The crime is letting a predator roam free, threatening other people's property. Mr. Brown, the pup will be transferred to an environmental reserve in the coming days. There's no more reason to worry. And until then, will you guarantee my cattle are safe? A manned wolf pup doesn't attack cattle, sir. They feed mainly on fruit, small rodents and insects. John Rivers seemed relieved that he didn't have to act against the animal. If the doctor guarantees she'll handle it, I think we can wait a few days. Mr. Brown wasn't satisfied, but faced with the biologist's authority and John's hesitation, he ended up agreeing to wait. 3 days, Doctor. If in 3 days that animal isn't out of here, I'll take my own measures. After the men left, Dr. Fern Miller talked with Mrs. Johnson about the urgency of the situation. Mrs. Johnson, I'm going to speed up the process. I'll come get the pup tomorrow. Dr. Tommy is going to be so sad. I understand, but now it's also a matter of safety. That man wasn't bluffing. That night, Mrs. Johnson had the difficult task of explaining to Tommy that his time with his little friend was over. Grandma, why does the mean man want to hurt the wolf pup? He's afraid, my love. Sometimes people do bad things when they're afraid. Like how I'm afraid that you'll go away like Mommy and Daddy? The comparison pained Mrs. Johnson. Tommy was learning about the world's cruelties too early. It is similar, yes, but the difference is that you can talk about your fear, and that helps. Mr. Brown only knows how to react with anger. Can I talk to him? Explain that the wolf pup is good? No, my love. Some adults don't know how to listen to children, but you will be able to explain to Dr. Fern Miller how to take good care of your little friend. The next morning, Dr. Fern Miller arrived with a transport crate suitable for wild animals. Tommy watched her with sad but determined eyes. Doctor, he likes soft food, and he likes it when we talk softly to him. I'll remember all of that, Tommy. And he gets scared when it's very dark. Leave a little light near him. Don't worry, I'll take good care of him. The moment of farewell was devastating. Tommy hugged the pup, who seemed to sense that something was happening. You're going to be very happy there, okay? And when you grow up big and strong, you can come visit me. The pup licked the boy's face, as if understanding it was a goodbye. Dr. Fern Miller placed the animal in the carrier with great care. Tommy, you can visit him next week. I'll call your grandmother to arrange it. After the biologist's car disappeared down the dirt road, Tommy threw himself into his grandmother's lap and cried like he hadn't cried since his parents disappeared. Grandma, does everyone I love leave? Mrs. Martha Johnson hugged her grandson tightly, feeling the weight of the responsibility of being the only constant in that child's life. No, my love, Grandma will never leave you, and those who truly love you always find a way to come back. The following days were difficult. Tommy lost his appetite and interest in playing. He spent hours in the empty barn, as if waiting for his little friend to appear. Mrs. Susan Wilson, who had been the catalyst for the whole situation, tried to console the boy. Tommy, you did the right thing. You saved the little animal's life. But the boy looked at her with resentment. In his 4-year-old mind, she was to blame for losing his friend. Mrs. Martha Johnson tried everything to cheer up her grandson. She made his favorite dessert, suggested games, even proposed going to town to buy a new toy. Nothing worked. Grandma, when is the doctor going to call? That was the question Tommy asked several times a day. On the 5th day after the goodbye, the phone finally rang. "Mrs. Martha Johnson, it's Dr. Fern Miller. How is Tommy?" "Devastated, doctor. He barely eats, barely plays." "I can imagine. I have good news. The pup is adapting well at the reserve. How about you come visit us tomorrow?" Tommy, who was playing near the phone, heard the conversation, and his eyes lit up for the first time in days. "Grandma, can we go?" The next day they made the trip to the Green Ridge Environmental Reserve. It was a beautiful place with lots of greenery and the sound of birds everywhere. Dr. Fern Miller greeted them with a smile. "Tommy, your little friend is eager to see you." They walked along a trail until they reached a large enclosure with native trees and a small stream. There was the pup, playing with other young maned wolves. "Look, Grandma, he made friends." The pup recognized Tommy immediately. He ran to the fence and started making the same soft sounds he used to make in the barn. "Hi, little friend. Are you happy here?" The animal seemed to be doing really well. He was stronger, his coat was shinier, and he was clearly having fun with others of his kind. "Doctor, does he remember me?" "Of course he does. And look what he's learned." The biologist threw some fruits into the enclosure. The pup searched for the food using his sense of smell, exactly like a wild-maned wolf would. "He's learning to be a real wolf," explained the doctor, "but he will never forget that you saved his life." They spent the whole afternoon observing the animals. Tommy told Dr. Fern Miller about the parents he had lost, and she explained that animals often lose their families too, but they can form new families in the wild. "Just like the little wolf did with the other wolves?" asked Tommy. "Exactly. And just like you did with me and your grandma. We can have more than one family in our hearts." On the way home, Tommy was more cheerful, but still carried a sadness. "Grandma, can I come back to see him again?" "Of course you can, my love. The doctor said we can visit whenever we want." But fate had even more surprises in store for that story. 2 weeks later, on a foggy morning, Mrs. Martha Johnson woke up to the sound of very agitated chickens in the yard. She thought it was strange because they were usually quiet at that hour. She went out to investigate and found a scene that left her speechless. In the middle of the yard there were wolf tracks, not just one but several. The tracks formed a circle around the house, as if the animals had been there during the night, but there were no signs that any chicken had been attacked. In fact, the birds seemed only frightened, not injured. Mrs. Martha Johnson ran to wake up Tommy. "My love, wake up. There's something you need to see." When Tommy saw the footprints, he got excited. "Grandma, my little friend came to visit me." It seems he didn't come alone, no. All day long, Tommy kept waiting for the wolves to appear again. Mrs. Martha Johnson was torn between the joy of seeing her grandson excited and the worry about what the neighbors would say. It didn't take long to find out. In the afternoon, Mr. Thomas Brown showed up at the property with a furious expression. "Mrs. Martha Johnson, was that story about the wolf being gone a lie?" "Mr. Thomas, the pup really was taken by Dr. Fern Miller." "Then how do you explain the wolf footprints I found on my property this morning? And my foreman saw tracks from an entire pack passing near the pasture." Mrs. Martha Johnson was speechless. She hadn't considered the possibility that other wolves might have appeared. I can't explain it." "Well, I can. That pup brought his family. Now I have a whole pack roaming my property because of your irresponsibility." Mr. Thomas Brown was agitated, gesturing with his hands. "I'm giving you 24 hours to fix this. If you don't, I'll call the police and the environmental agencies. I'll tell the whole story of how you raised a wolf here." After he left, Mrs. Martha Johnson desperately called Dr. Fern Miller. "Doctor, there are wolves here on the property. Mr. Thomas is threatening to call the authorities." "Mrs. Martha Johnson, calm down. I'm coming there right now. Don't do anything until I arrive." While they waited for the biologist, Tommy asked a question that chilled Mrs. Martha Johnson's blood. "Grandma, if the police come, will they take me away from you?" The possibility of losing her grandson because of this whole situation was Mrs. Martha Johnson's greatest fear. "No, my love. Grandma won't let anyone take you." But internally, she was terrified. She knew there were laws about keeping wild animals, and that the consequences could be serious. Dr. Fern Miller arrived in the evening, accompanied by a fellow researcher. Mrs. Martha Johnson My colleague Edward is an expert in manned wolf behavior. We need to understand what's happening. Edward examined the footprints carefully. They are definitely adult manned wolves, at least 4 or 5. This is very unusual. Why would they have come here? Asked Mrs. Martha Johnson. Probably looking for the pup, replied Dr. Fern Miller. Maned wolves have very strong family bonds. So, it's my little friend's family? Asked Tommy, his eyes shining. Most likely, yes. But that doesn't solve our problem, reminded Mrs. Martha Johnson. Mr. Thomas is going to call the authorities. Edward and Dr. Fern Miller exchanged looks. Mrs. Martha Johnson, I need to tell you something. We were investigating the disappearance of a family of manned wolves that had been tagged for research. The pup that Tommy saved probably belongs to that family. What do you mean? For the last 2 years, we've been monitoring a very special pack in this region. The parents disappeared along with 2 pups. We found signs that that something happened to them. Mrs. Martha Johnson felt a chill in her stomach. What kind of thing? Illegal traps, hunters. It's a serious problem in the region. The information brought a disturbing revelation. If the pup's parents had disappeared, that explained why he was alone when Tommy found him. But doctor, if the family disappeared, who are these wolves that showed up here? It could be the rest of the pack, uncles, cousins, other relatives. They might have caught the pup's scent here and came looking. Tommy was trying to understand the adults' conversation. Doctor, is my little friend an orphan like me? The innocent question brought tears to Mrs. Martha Johnson's eyes. Once again, Tommy had identified his own situation in the animals. It might be, Tommy, but just like you have your grandma, he now has other wolves taking care of him. Is that why they came here? To thank me for taking care of him? Edward was impressed by the child's intuition. You know, that might be exactly it. Wild animals have their own ways of showing gratitude. So they are good? Yes, they are. But they need to go back to the forest. That night, everyone stayed awake, hoping to see if the wolves would return. Around midnight, Tommy whispered, "Grandma, there's noise outside." They looked out the window and saw an unforgettable scene. 5 adult manned wolves were in the yard, walking calmly, sniffing the places where the pup had been. One of them, larger than the others, approached the window and looked directly at Tommy. For a few seconds, child and animal stared at each other in silence. "He's looking at me," whispered Tommy. "Yes, he is," confirmed Dr. Fern Miller, moved. "He knows you helped one of his own." The wolf made a movement with its head, almost like a greeting, and then howled softly. The others responded with similar howls. "They're talking," said Tommy, amazed. "They're saying thank you," translated Edward. After a few minutes, the wolves moved away and disappeared into the darkness. The next morning, Mr. Thomas Brown arrived as promised, but he wasn't alone. He brought an environmental officer and 2 police officers. "This is the property where they are illegally raising a wolf," he said, pointing to the house. The officer, a young and serious man, introduced himself as Charles Miller. "Folks, we are here to investigate the complaint. Where is the animal?" Mrs. Martha Johnson explained the whole situation, from finding the pup to its transfer to the reserve. "The animal is no longer here, officer. It was handed over to Dr. Fern Miller 2 weeks ago. The doctor showed all the official transfer documentation." "Everything was done legally, Officer Charles. The animal is in our custody at the Green Ridge Reserve." "But what about the wolves that showed up here?" insisted Mr. Thomas Brown. "Wild animals move freely through the region, sir," explained the officer. "As long as they are not being kept in captivity, it is not a crime." "And how do you explain the footprints on my property?" Edward showed a map of the region. "Mr. Thomas, this area is part of the natural wildlife corridor. It's normal for animals to pass through here. But they could attack my cattle." "Maned wolves do not attack cattle, sir," Dr. Fern Miller explained patiently. "They feed mainly on fruits and small animals." Officer Charles made some notes and spoke with the police officers. "There is no evidence of an environmental crime here. The complaint is unfounded. Mr. Thomas Brown was outraged. So you're not going to do anything? I have to live with wolves on my property?" "Sir, If the animals are not causing material damage and are not in captivity, there is nothing to be done. It's nature taking its course. After the authorities left, Mrs. Martha Johnson breathed a sigh of relief, but Mr. Thomas Brown did not give up easily. "This isn't over," he grumbled before leaving. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially to subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out. Now continuing. In the following weeks, life on the small property took a surprising turn. The maned wolves continued to appear occasionally, always in the early morning, always peaceful. Tommy developed a routine of leaving a plate of fruit in the yard before going to sleep. In the morning, the plate was always empty. "Grandma, they like the fruit I leave." They seem to really like it, my love. Dr. Fern Miller began regularly visiting the property to document this unusual behavior. "Mrs. Martha Johnson, this is extraordinary. I've never seen maned wolves establish such a close relationship with humans while keeping their wild instincts. Is it dangerous? On the contrary, they're teaching us that peaceful coexistence is possible." Edward had installed monitoring cameras to study the animal's behavior. "Tommy, you didn't just save one pup, you saved an entire family." "How so?" "When you cared for the pup, you showed the whole pack that not all humans are dangerous. This is very important for the species preservation." The story began to spread throughout the region. Journalists from neighboring towns came to meet the boy who talks to wolves. But not everyone viewed the situation favorably. A group of farmers, led by Mr. Thomas Brown, began pressuring the town council to take more drastic measures. "This is a dangerous precedent," Mr. Thomas Brown argued in meetings. "If everyone starts protecting wild animals, our cattle farming is threatened." On the other side, a group of local residents, inspired by Tommy's story, began to take more interest in environmental preservation. Mrs. Mary, the retired teacher from the local school, was one of the first to support the family. "Martha, your grandson has taught us an important lesson about compassion." She began organizing lectures about environmental preservation at the school, always using Tommy's story as an example. The conflict in the community intensified when some cattle from neighboring farms began to disappear. Although there was no evidence it was the wolves, rumors spread quickly. "I told you this would cause problems," Mr. Thomas Brown said to anyone who would listen. The pressure on Mrs. Martha Johnson increased. Some neighbors began avoiding her at the market. Others made nasty comments when she passed by. "Grandma, why are people being mean to us?" asked Tommy, noticing the change in the adult's behavior. "Because they're afraid of what they don't understand, my love. Like I was afraid of the dark before you explained there was no boogeyman." Exactly like that. The situation reached a breaking point when Mr. Thomas Brown called a public meeting to discuss the wolf problem. The meeting took place in the local church hall, and almost the entire community attended. On one side were the farmers and people who supported Mr. Thomas Brown. On the other, the environmental preservation advocates led by Mrs. Mary. "Folks," began Mr. Thomas Brown, "we're here to resolve this wolf issue once and for all. I can't accept my livelihood being harmed by a child's whim." Mrs. Mary stood up to respond. "Thomas, with all due respect, it's not a whim. It's about learning to live with nature instead of destroying it." "Mary, you don't have cattle. It's easy to talk when your livelihood isn't threatened." The discussion heated up quickly. People shouted, accusations flew through the air. It was then that Tommy, who was sitting on Mrs. Martha Johnson's lap, asked to speak. "Can I say something?" The hall fell silent. It was unusual for a child to ask to participate in an adult meeting. "Tommy, sweetie, this is adult conversation," Mrs. Mary said gently. "But it's about my little friend. Can I explain?" Mrs. Martha Johnson looked around the hall. She saw curious faces, some friendly, others hostile. "Let the boy speak," said a voice from the back. Mrs. Martha Johnson stood Tommy up on a chair so everyone could see him. "I just wanted to say that my little wolf friend never hurt anyone," Tommy began in his small but clear voice. "He was in pain when I found him by the fence, like I feel pain when I remember my mom and dad." The hall remained in absolute silence. "I took care of him just like my grandma takes care of me." And the other little wolves came here just to say thank you. They didn't eat any of Grandma's chickens. They only ate the fruit I leave out for them." Some people began to be moved by the innocence of the words. "Mr. Thomas Brown is scared, just like I used to be scared of the dark. But if we get to know the little wolves, you'll see they're good." Tommy looked directly at Mr. Thomas Brown. "Do you want to meet my little friend? I can ask Dr. Fern Miller to bring him here." Tommy's innocent proposal caused a stir in the hall. Mr. Thomas Brown was visibly flustered. "Son, it's not exactly like that." "Why not?" insisted Tommy. "If you meet him, you'll see you don't need to be scared." Mrs. Mary seized the moment. "How about we accept Tommy's proposal? Dr. Fern Miller can bring the pup here safely to show everyone there's no danger." Many in the hall agreed with the idea. Mr. Thomas Brown found himself cornered by the simple logic of a 4-year-old. "All right," he said reluctantly, "but if that animal shows any sign of aggression—" "He won't," Tommy guaranteed with the absolute confidence of innocence. The meeting was scheduled for the following week. Dr. Fern Miller agreed to bring the pup, who was now much bigger and stronger. During the week, the whole community was talking about the upcoming encounter. Some people were curious, others were worried. Mrs. Martha Johnson was nervous. "Doctor, what if something goes wrong?" "Mrs. Martha Johnson, the pup is very well socialized, and Tommy has a special connection with him. Everything will be fine." On the appointed day, the church hall was packed. Entire families came to witness the historic meeting. Dr. Fern Miller arrived with the pup in a special carrier. The animal was much bigger, but still maintained its characteristic gentleness. "Everyone," she said, "I'm going to let the pup out here in the hall. I ask everyone to remain calm and quiet." When she opened the carrier, the pup came out hesitantly, looking around curiously. There were many people and different smells, but when he saw Tommy, his eyes lit up with recognition. He ran to the boy and started making the soft sounds he always made when they were together. "Hi, little friend," said Tommy, kneeling to hug the animal. The pup licked the boy's face and rested its head on his chest, clearly happy to be reunited with his savior. The hall was in absolute silence. Everyone watched that display of affection and mutual trust. "Everyone," said Dr. Fern Miller, "you are seeing living proof that peaceful coexistence between humans and wildlife is possible." Mr. Thomas Brown was impressed despite his initial resistance. "But this one is a pup," he argued. "When he grows up, he'll become dangerous." "Mr. Thomas Brown," replied Edward, "adult maned wolves that have had positive contact with humans tend to maintain peaceful behavior. They are not aggressive by nature." Tommy was playing with the pup in the center of the hall, and the animal responded happily, jumping and running around the boy. "Mr. Thomas Brown," said Tommy, "do you want to pet him?" The farmer hesitated. His whole life he had been taught to see wild animals as threats. "I don't know if it's safe." "It is," Tommy guaranteed. "He's as good as a little dog." With all eyes in the hall fixed on him, Mr. Thomas Brown slowly approached. The pup looked at him curiously but without fear. When the farmer extended his hand, the animal sniffed it and then licked it. "My God," whispered Mr. Thomas Brown, "he really is tame." From that moment, the farmer's resistance began to melt away. "Doctor, how do you guarantee he'll stay like this when he grows up?" "Mr. Brown, what determines a wild animal's behavior is mainly how it's treated. If it learns that humans are friends, it will maintain that association." Mrs. Mary took the moment to make a proposal. "Folks, how about we create an environmental education project in our community? We can learn more about our local wildlife and how to coexist with it." The idea was enthusiastically accepted by most of those present. "Tommy would be our official ambassador," joked Mrs. Mary. The boy smiled, proud of the role he'd been given. "Can I teach other kids how to take care of animals?" "Yes, you can," confirmed Dr. Fern Miller. "We'll set up regular visits to the reserve so children can learn about preservation." The meeting ended on a much more harmonious note than it had begun. Mr. Brown, though still cautious, agreed to participate in the educational project. "If it's going to be good for the community, I can help out," he said. But the problems weren't completely over yet. 2 weeks later, An unexpected event would test the trust being built in the community once again. During a night of heavy storms, Tommy woke up to a strange noise in the backyard. He looked out the window and saw something that worried him. One of the adult wolves was in the yard, but it was behaving strangely. It was walking in circles, as if desperately looking for something. "Grandma, there's a wolf outside, but it's acting weird." Mrs. Martha Johnson looked out the window and also noticed the animal's abnormal behavior. "We'd better not go out, sweetheart. Let it leave on its own." But the wolf didn't leave. It stayed in the backyard, howling softly, as if asking for help. Tommy grew more and more worried. "Grandma, it's calling for help, like I did when I got hurt, and you helped me. Tommy, it could be dangerous. But what if it needs help, like my little friend the pup needed?" The storm was intense, with scary lightning and thunder. The wolf took shelter on the house's porch, but kept howling. Mrs. Martha Johnson made a brave decision. "I'm going to call Dr. Fern Miller. She'll know what to do." The biologist arrived even in the rain, accompanied by Edward. "What strange behavior," observed Edward. "It seems to be trying to tell us something." "Doctor, is it calling us somewhere?" asked Tommy. "It could be. Some animals do that when they need help." They decided to follow the wolf, which seemed to understand its message had been received. It ran toward the woods, stopping now and then to check if they were following. After a 10-minute walk in the rain, they reached a clearing where they found a worrying scene. 2 other wolves were around a fallen tree, clearly agitated. And under the tree— "My God!" exclaimed Dr. Fern Miller. "It's the pup." The pup that Tommy had saved was trapped under a thick branch of the tree that had fallen during the storm. "Is he hurt?" asked Tommy, running toward his friend. Edward quickly examined the animal. "It looks like he's just trapped, but we need to move this branch carefully." The adult wolves watched the scene from a distance, clearly worried but trusting the humans to help. "Tommy," said Dr. Fern Miller, "can you talk to your little friend? He needs to stay calm while we move the branch." The boy knelt near the pup and began speaking in the same gentle voice he always used. "Easy, little friend, we're going to get you out of there, just like the first time, remember?" The pup recognized the voice and stopped struggling, trusting Tommy completely. Edward and Dr. Fern Miller managed to lift the branch just enough for the animal to get out. He was hurt in the paw, but nothing serious. "He'll be okay," the biologist assured after examining the injury. The adult wolves approached cautiously, sniffing the pup to check if it was okay. "Grandma, they came to ask for our help," said Tommy, amazed. "They really did, my love. They trust us." That episode marked a definitive turning point in the relationship between the community and the maned wolves. The story spread quickly throughout the region. The wolves that ask humans for help became a headline in local newspapers. Mr. Thomas Brown, who had witnessed the entire rescue, was deeply impressed. "I've never seen anything like it in my life," he commented to his neighbors. "The animals came to ask for our help just like people do." From that day on, the community's attitude changed completely. Instead of fearing the wolves, people began to see them as an integral part of the local environment. The City Council of Indian Falls officially created the Harmonious Coexistence Project, with Tommy as its junior ambassador. "Tommy," said the mayor during the project's launch ceremony, "you have taught us that compassion has no age." The boy, now 5 years old, had become a minor local celebrity, but he remained the same sweet and caring child as always. Mrs. Martha Johnson was proud of her grandson, but also worried about all the attention he was receiving. "Doctor, I don't want all this fame to change my grandson." "Mrs. Johnson, Tommy has a solid foundation. Besides, he is using his story to teach others. That is very positive." The educational project expanded. Schools from neighboring towns began bringing students to visit the community and learn about environmental preservation. Tommy loved telling his story to other children. "The secret is to treat the little animals with kindness," he would explain. "They can tell when we are being good." Visits to the Green Ridge Reserve became regular. The pup, now a young adult, always showed special joy when Tommy appeared. "Doctor, why does he still remember me?" the boy asked during one of the visits. "Because you saved his life, Tommy. Animals never forget those who help them." Just like I'll never forget the grandma who helped me when I was sad. Exactly like that. The local economy also benefited from the project. Ecotourism began attracting visitors interested in the story of the boy and the wolves. Mrs. Mary opened a small country inn to accommodate the visitors. "Martha, your grandson has brought prosperity to our community," she commented. Mr. Thomas Brown, who had been the project's biggest opponent, became one of its greatest defenders. "My property has never had problems with the wolves," he would tell tourists. "They are intelligent animals that know how to distinguish friend from foe." He even created an ecological trail on his farm, where it was possible to spot the wolves from a respectful distance. 1 year after the first meeting between Tommy and the pup, the community organized a big party to celebrate the project's success. Families from various neighboring towns attended the event. There were stalls with local food, cultural presentations, and talks about environmental preservation. During the party, something unexpected happened. The entire pack of maned wolves appeared at the edge of the area where the celebration was taking place. They stayed at a distance, watching the activity, but clearly without fear. "Look over there," shouted a child, pointing at the animals. The whole party stopped to observe the special visitors. "They came to the party too," said Tommy, running towards the wolves. Mrs. Martha Johnson tried to stop him, but Dr. Fern Miller reassured her. "Let him go, Mrs. Johnson. They know Tommy." The boy approached the pack naturally. The wolves greeted him with their usual displays of affection, licking his hands and making the soft sounds he had learned to recognize as a greeting. "Everyone," shouted Tommy to the crowd. "They want to say hello to you." The scene moved everyone present. Adults cried seeing that demonstration of harmony between humans and nature. "This is a miracle," whispered an elderly lady, who had come from another city especially to learn about the story. Edward was documenting everything with his camera. "Mrs. Martha Johnson, you are making history. This is the first community in Brazil that established a symbiotic relationship with wild maned wolves." Symbiotic. It means everyone wins. The wolves have a safe place to live, and the community benefits from tourism and environmental preservation. During the party, Tommy was invited to speak on the main stage. "I just wanted to say," he began, holding the microphone with his small hands, "that the little forest animals are our friends. We just need to be nice to them." The audience applauded, moved. "And I want to thank my grandma, who always taught me to take care of those who need help." Mrs. Martha Johnson was in the front row with tears in her eyes, too proud to express in words. "And thank you to all of you who understood that the little wolves just wanted to be friends," concluded Tommy. After the speech, a journalist from a national magazine asked to interview Tommy. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" "I want to take care of little animals like Dr. Fern Miller." "And what would you say to other children who find injured animals?" "That they should call adults to help, but always with kindness, never with fear." The interview was published in the magazine and brought even more attention to the community. Universities began sending students to study the unique case of harmonious coexistence established there. But for Tommy, all that fame didn't change his routine. He kept leaving fruit for the wolves, visiting his friend at the reserve, and helping Dr. Fern Miller with other animals that occasionally needed care. "Tommy," said the doctor during one of his visits, "do you know you've become an example for children all over Brazil?" "Why?" "Because you showed that a small person can do big things when acting with love." "Like Grandma always says? That the size of the heart is more important than the size of the body?" "Exactly that." 2 years after the story began, Tommy was already 6 years old and attending the local school. His story had become part of the mandatory curriculum on environmental education. "Teacher," asked a little classmate during the lesson, "is it true that Tommy talks to wolves?" "Not exactly talks," explained the teacher, "but he learned to understand the signals they make, and they learned to trust him." "Can I learn too?" "Of course you can. The secret is to always treat animals with respect and kindness." Tommy was still a shy child, but he had gained a special confidence when the subject was animals. Once, a tourist brought his dog to the community, and the animal was very aggressive with everyone. "Tommy," said the dog's owner, "do you think you can calm him down?" The boy approached the animal patiently, speaking softly and moving slowly. In a few minutes, the dog was calm and letting Tommy pet him. "How did you do that?" asked the tourist, impressed. He was scared. "When we aren't scared of them, they stop being scared of us." These small demonstrations of his special gift with animals happened regularly, solidifying Tommy's reputation as the boy who understands animals. Mrs. Martha Johnson continued to be his solid foundation, always reminding her grandson that despite all the attention, he was still a normal child. "My love, never forget that you did all this because you have a good heart. That's what matters." "Grandma, can I keep taking care of little animals when I grow up?" "Yes, you can. But always studying hard to do it the right way." The story had reached the attention of international research institutions. Researchers from other countries came to study the coexistence model developed in the community. "Tommy," said an American researcher through a translator, "your story is inspiring similar projects in other countries." "That's so cool. Does that mean other little animals will be cared for like my little friend?" "Exactly." During one of the international visits, something happened that deeply marked Tommy. A French researcher was documenting the project when she noticed something peculiar in the wolves' behavior. "Dr. Fern," she said, "have you observed that the wolves imitate some of Tommy's gestures?" "What do you mean?" "Look there, when Tommy sits, they sit. When he extends his hand, they approach. It's as if they've developed their own language." The researcher's observation led to new studies on interspecies communication. Edward began specific research on the relationship between Tommy and the wolves. "Tommy, can I run some tests with you and your wolf friends?" "What kind of tests?" "I want to see if you've really developed a special way of communicating." The tests revealed that Tommy had unconsciously developed a system of signals that the wolves understood and responded to. "This is incredible," commented Edward. "He created a bridge of communication between different species." "But is that normal?" asked Mrs. Martha Johnson, worried. "It's extraordinary, but perfectly natural. Some people have this special ability to connect with animals." The discovery attracted even more scientific attention to the case. Universities offered scholarships to Tommy for when he reached the appropriate age. "Mrs. Martha Johnson," said the dean of a federal university, "your grandson has a bright future ahead of him in the field of biology and environmental preservation." "He's still too young to think about that," she replied, always cautious. "Of course, but it's important that he knows that, when the time comes, he will have every opportunity in the world." Despite all the academic attention, Tommy continued to be a normal child in many ways. He liked to play, sometimes threw tantrums, was afraid of thunder, but his special connection with nature kept growing. One morning, he woke up agitated. "Grandma, I dreamed there were injured little animals in the forest." "It was just a dream, my love, but it felt very real. Can I go check if everything is okay?" Mrs. Martha Johnson had already learned to trust her grandson's instincts. "Let's call Dr. Fern to come with us." They set off towards the forest, following Tommy's hunch. After a walk, they found 3 young of other species, a lesser anteater and 2 armadillos, clearly orphaned and very weak. "How did you know?" asked Dr. Fern, amazed. "I dreamed about them. I saw where they were and that they were hungry." The doctor was impressed with yet another demonstration of Tommy's special intuition. "Let's take them to the reserve to care for them properly." The 3 young were saved and recovered completely. "Tommy," said Edward, "you have a very special gift for helping animals." "Everyone does, Uncle Edward. They just need to pay attention to what the little animals are trying to say." The boy's simple and wise answer impressed the researcher. "I think you're right. Maybe we've lost that ability to connect with nature. My grandma says that when we grow up, we sometimes forget to listen to our hearts." The community continued to prosper with ecotourism. New families moved to the region, attracted by the quality of life and the philosophy of harmonious coexistence with nature. Mrs. Susan Wilson, who had initially been against the wolves, became one of the project's biggest enthusiasts. "Martha, your grandson taught us that sometimes our fears keep us from seeing beautiful things." "It's true, Susan. I myself learned a lot from him." The local school had become a benchmark for environmental education. Children from other regions would come for exchange visits to learn about preservation. Tommy loved hosting the visiting children and teaching them what he knew about animals. The first thing, he would tell the new classmates, is to never be afraid. The little animals can sense when we're scared, and they get scared too. But what if the animal is dangerous? Asked a boy from another town. Then we call an adult for help, but most little animals just want to live in peace, just like us. During one of these visits, a girl asked, "Tommy, were you never afraid of being attacked by the wolves?" "At first I didn't know they were wolves. I just saw a little cub crying and needing help." "And when you found out they were wolves?" "By then we were already friends, and friends don't hurt friends." Tommy's simple wisdom continued to impress both adults and children. 3 years after the story began, Tommy turned 7. The community organized a special party to celebrate another birthday for their little hero. During the party, the wolf pack appeared as they always did on special occasions. But this time, they brought a surprise. The original cub, now a magnificent adult wolf, had brought his own family. 3 little cubs ran toward Tommy. "Grandma, look, my little friend became a dad." The scene moved everyone present. The wolf Tommy had saved was now teaching his own cubs to trust humans. "It's the story continuing," whispered Mrs. Martha Johnson with tears in her eyes. The new cubs were as gentle as their father had been. They played with Tommy as if he were their favorite uncle. "Doctor," Tommy asked, "will they grow up to be our friends too?" "If you keep taking care of them with kindness, definitely." That scene perfectly symbolized the cycle of trust and love that had been established between humans and animals in that community. Edward was documenting everything for a book he was writing about the case. "Mrs. Johnson, your story is going to become a book that will be read in schools all over the world. I hope it inspires other children to care for animals. It will definitely inspire." Tommy's birthday party became an annual event that attracted visitors from various parts of the country. But for the boy, the most important thing wasn't the fame, but the certainty that his animal friends were happy and safe. "Grandma, do you think Mom and Dad would be proud of me?" The question touched Mrs. Martha Johnson deeply. It was rare for Tommy to talk about his parents. "I'm sure they would be very proud, my love. You've become exactly the kind of person they would have wanted you to be." "How do you know?" "Because you have a good heart, just like they did. And good-hearted people are always proud of each other." That night, Tommy asked a question that showed how much he had matured. "Grandma, when I grow up and become an adult, do you think I'll still understand the little animals?" "I don't know, my love, but I know you will always have love for animals, and that's the most important thing. I'm going to study hard to take care of them the right way. I'm sure you will." Another year passed. Tommy was 8 years old and already showed a genuine interest in learning more about biology and veterinary science. Dr. Fern Miller had become a sort of mentor to him. "Tommy, how about we start teaching you some basic things about biology?" "Really, I can." "Of course, you have a practical foundation that many adults don't have." The informal biology lessons happened during visits to the reserve. Tommy learned about feeding, behavior, reproduction, and care for different species. "Doctor, why are some animals afraid of people and others aren't?" "It depends on the experiences they've had. Animals that were mistreated by humans develop fear. Those that were treated with kindness, like your wolf friends, develop trust. So it's important to be nice to all the little animals from when they're small." "Exactly. And it's also important that humans learn to respect wild animals' space." Tommy absorbed these lessons with impressive ease. One day he made an observation that surprised even the experienced researchers. "Doctor, I noticed that the wolves get more restless 2 days before it rains. Are you sure?" "Yes. They start howling differently and keep walking back and forth." Edward checked the weather records and confirmed that Tommy was right. "How did you notice that?" "I pay attention to their ways, just like my grandma pays attention to my ways when I'm sad or happy." Tommy's observation led to a new line of research about the maned wolf's ability to predict weather changes. "Tommy," said Edward, "you just contributed to science." "How so?" "Your observation might help other researchers better understand how animals sense changes in the weather." The discovery earned Tommy a special mention in an international scientific magazine. "My grandson becoming a scientist," joked Mrs. Martha Johnson. "Who knows, right, Grandma?" replied Tommy, smiling. The community's story kept evolving. The Harmonious Coexistence Project had become a model for other regions in the country. Delegations from various cities came to learn about the initiative and how to implement similar projects. Tommy always participated in the presentations, explaining in his own words how everything had started. "The secret is very simple," he would tell the visitors. "You just have to remember that the little animals feel just like we do. They get happy when they're loved and sad when they're mistreated." His simple and direct explanations often touched people more than the adults' technical presentations. One international delegation was particularly impressed. "This boy has a natural wisdom that isn't taught in universities," commented one of the visitors. "It's true," agreed Dr. Fern Miller. "He teaches us as much as we teach him." During one of the official visits, the state capital's mayor himself came to see the project. "Tommy," said the mayor, "your story is a pride for our state." "Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do you like little animals too?" "Yes, I do. And after hearing your story, I'll pay more attention to them. If you want, I can teach you how to pet the little wolves." Tommy's innocent offer drew laughter from everyone present. "It would be an honor," replied the mayor, genuinely touched by the boy's spontaneity. And that's how the state capital's mayor ended up having his first close experience with maned wolves, guided by an 8-year-old boy. "Amazing," whispered the mayor when one of the wolves licked his hand. "They really are gentle." "Yes, they are," confirmed Tommy. "They just need love like everyone else." That visit resulted in official support from the state government to expand the project to other regions. "Tommy," the mayor said before leaving, "you planted a seed that will grow and help many animals across the whole state." "That's great. Does that mean there will be more happy little animals?" "Many more." Tommy's genuine joy at the news showed that, despite all the attention he received, his heart remained pure and focused on the animals' well-being. Mrs. Martha Johnson watched her grandson's growth with a mix of pride and worry. "Doctor, sometimes I worry if all this responsibility isn't too much for a child." "Mrs. Martha Johnson, Tommy is handling everything very naturally. He doesn't see it as a responsibility, but as fun. It's true. He's happy when he can help the little animals, and that happiness is contagious. That's why the project is so successful." Another year passed and Tommy turned 9. The community had grown and developed, but it always kept its focus on environmental preservation and harmonious coexistence. The local school had become one of the best in the region for environmental education. Children who studied there often pursued careers related to nature preservation. "Teacher," Tommy asked during a lesson, "how many different animals live in our forest?" "Many, Tommy. We have over 100 species catalogued in the area. And can they all be our friends like the little wolves?" "Not all of them, Tommy. Some animals need to keep their distance from humans for their own good, but they all deserve our respect and protection." The teacher's answer showed how education in the community had evolved. It wasn't just about taming wild animals, but about understanding and respecting each species. Tommy was learning these important distinctions. "Dr. Fern Miller," he asked during one of his visits to the reserve, "why can some little animals be our friends and others can't?" "Because each species has different needs. The maned wolves are naturally curious and sociable. A jaguar, for example, needs a lot of territory and very little contact with humans to be happy." "I see. Is it like people? Some people like having lots of friends and some like to be more alone?" "Exactly, Tommy, you understood perfectly." Tommy's ability to draw analogies between animal and human behavior continued to impress the adults. During one of the practical lessons at the reserve, something happened that showed how Tommy had matured in his relationship with the animals. A fawn had been brought to the reserve after being found orphaned. The animal was very frightened and wouldn't let anyone get close. "Tommy," said Dr. Fern Miller, "do you think you can calm him down?" The boy observed the fawn for a few minutes before answering. "Doctor, I don't think this one wants to be my friend, and that's okay." "Why do you think that?" "Because he keeps hiding every time he sees people. The little wolves always came towards us. This little one wants to be alone." Tommy's observation was correct. The fawn was from a species that naturally avoids contact with humans. Very good, Tommy. You've learned to respect the animals' boundaries. It's important to let them choose if they want to be our friends or not, right? Exactly. That's a very important lesson. That episode marked another step in Tommy's growing maturity. He was learning that love for animals also means respecting their nature and individual needs. The story continued to impact lives far from the small community. Children's books were written based on Tommy's experience, documentaries were produced, educational programs were created. But for Tommy himself, life remained simple and focused on what really mattered to him: the well-being of his animal friends and the love of his grandmother. "Grandma," he said on a quiet afternoon, "do you think when I grow up, I'll be able to help little animals from all over the world?" "I don't know, my love. But I know you're already helping little animals from places you can't even imagine." "What do you mean?" "Because your story inspires other people to care for animals where they live." The idea that his story could help animals far away filled Tommy with joy. "So even without leaving here, I can help little animals from everywhere." "Yes, you can. The love you show for animals teaches other people to love them too." That conversation touched Tommy deeply. He began to understand that his actions had consequences far beyond what he could see. End of story. So, dear listener, what did you think of this exciting story about Tommy and the maned wolves? Tell us in the comments which part touched you the most, and whether you believe this harmonious coexistence between humans and wild animals is possible. Leave your like if the story moved you, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other amazing stories like this one.